Next up in chapter 9, we have the puppet warp. So we're going to start by opening the file in chapter 9 called Elephant PSD. So puppet warp, we saw that in Illustrator where we were able to add some pins and then move limbs around. We moved the person hanging from the flag, if you remember that. And that kind of makes sense with vectors because we have anchor points, whereas Photoshop is just pixels. So how on earth can we make this work? Amazingly, we can. Technically, this is a filter, so it's going to be best when applied to a smart object. But we also have to basically isolate this elephant and get it on a plain background or a different background, and then manipulate the elephant layer with this puppet warp. So the first thing we're going to do is duplicate the background layer. So Command J is the shortcut for that. And we're going to rename this one Puppet Elephant. And they were nice, and they've already selected the elephant for us. We can't see it, but at some time before they saved this file, they made a good selection of the elephant, and then they saved it. So all we have to do is go up to Selection and say Load it. But by the way, this is where we would save it if you ever want to do this. So maybe there's something that you feel like, I wish I always had saved that selection just so I had it. After you get your marching ants, you can go in here and make a selection, save one. So we're going to say Load Selection. And it's going to ask us what we want to do from the drop down. So the channel that we want is the one called Elephant. He had already made that for us. And we want it as a new selection, and we'll say okay. And look at that, our marching ants are right there. So thank you, book author, for doing that before us. With that selected, with the marching ants, we're going to come down and make a layer mask on it. So if we look here, we have everything masked out but the elephant right now. All right, now that we have the elephant isolated on its own layer, we have to remove it from the background layer. In other words, when we make this elephant maybe his trunk going up or his leg going out, we don't want the elephant behind him on this normal layer to still be visible. So we're going to fill the background with content-aware fill, which we've seen before, but this is where Photoshop is going to analyze surrounding pixels and kind of guess what that area should be like and fill it in. So we're going to turn the eyeball off on our puppet elephant so that we don't see it, and we're going to intentionally select the background. So that's this whole picture with the elephant. All right. We're going to load the elephant selection again. Select, load selection, elephant. So the marching ants are now on the elephant on this layer, which is what we want. And we're going to slightly modify this out so that when Photoshop does the content-aware fill, it can analyze pixels outside to fill on the inside. So we're going to do a select, modify, expand. And we're going to expand this by 5 pixels and say okay. So notice how our marching ants are now bumped out, and that helps us now. We'll be able to get a good selection of, or a good reading of what this background is to help fill in here. All right, then we're going to do an edit, and then we're going to do a content-aware fill. In your book it just says fill, and content aware is an option within there as well. So content aware fill, and it's going to kind of give us a preview of what it's doing, and here's what it's going to do based on where we started. Now, is this perfect? Absolutely not. Is it better than doing it manually? Yes, it is. Look, we even have 2 people here. This is always a good first step because why not let it do the bulk of the work and then clean it up as needed. So if you wanted to do it, you could run this again. I'm just going to say okay, and I'm going to turn off my marching ants with a deselect, and I'm just going to turn on this elephant layer, and you can tell that it looks okay. This is kind of goofy right in here, so maybe back here I would do the same thing. I would do another let's see, I want to do a lasso. Maybe fill this in right here and try to do a content aware fill on this as also. See if we can get it in any better. Looks a little bit better. So I'd spend a lot more time on this. If this were a true project, I would get rid of the double people. But for now, we've got a nice start. So at least when we move our elephant, we're not going to have a problem. By the way, this made a second background layer over here. I'm just going to merge it down with a Command E. I'm going to take that layer and merge it into the one right below it. All right, we are going to go on our layer that is called Puppet Elephant, this one, and we're going to turn it back on and we're going to convert it to a smart object. So we're going to right click, convert to a smart object. So there's our Puppet Elephant. Then we're going to go into Puppet Warp itself. So, and you know what, this background over here, I'm even going to merge that down because it looks like there's an elephant there and there's not. So I'm going to merge that down with the Command E also. So all we really have is a background layer and an elephant layer right now. So back on the Puppet Elephant layer, we're going to enter Puppet Warp. So we're going to come up to Edit and then Puppet Warp. All right, this is going to bring up a mesh, and as we bring our cursor over, we're going to see a few other things going on in this mode. So this mesh that it put on for us is just something that can help with seeing perhaps where some anchor points should be, but it's not needed. So up at the top here, we have an option to show the mesh. I'm just going to turn that off. All right, now we're going to bring our cursor, whoops, we're going to bring our cursor in here. I expected it actually to change how it looked, but it doesn't. It looks like a regular arrow, but anytime we click to put down an anchor point, we're going to be adding just that, an adjustment pin, and these serve as attachment points that you can drag to distort pixels. They can serve as a point of rotation or an anchor. So let's start by putting one right here at the tip. There was the stick pin that I expected. Put one at the tip of the elephant's trunk, and then we're going to move this around and notice how that point of the elephant stays anchored. And we have no others, so that makes no sense right now, but you'll see in a minute. Now let's go up and add one up here closer to the tusk. Now, if we move points, we have an anchor point and a rotation point. So we're starting to move the elephant around. I'm also stretching that, which is not a good look. I'll bring him back down to the ground here. Poor elephant. Oh, the things we do. We could also move this point, and then the other one serves as an anchor. So you can see we're doing some crazy twirls there. All right, bring you back to normal. So we have point 1 and point 2 entered so far. We're now going to go and add one at the elbow right here, and then the bottom of this foot. Then we're going to add one at the top of the back leg and the bottom of the back front leg. Bottom of the back leg, or I'm sorry, up here, and then the foot of the back leg. 9 is going to be kind of up here in the hips. 10 is going to be right here. Then we're going to put one on the tail right here, and one down on the tip of the tail. So now the thing that we have to know is that the pin depth is the stacking order. So for example, if we take this one and swing it this way, we can see that it's the last pin we put in, so it stays in front of the others. If we want to get rid of a pin, we could option click and to select it. Once it's selected, then we could just hit delete. Some other things that we can do, we can take this foot, and now you can see that it's being anchored up here at the elbow, if you will. And maybe move that one. It's kind of weird. Kick this leg back a little bit. Maybe take the trunk up a bit now. Oh, this poor guy. So we can do quite a few different things. We can also rotate around any given adjustment pin. Hold down Option and keep, when you see, there we go, I'm holding Option and I'm moving slightly away and I see that round circle. Now I'm actually spinning around this point. It's kind of hard to tell with this example. Select this one. There we go. Now you can see it a little bit better. Now it looks like his foot is up in the air. So Option, and when you get that circle around there, you can pivot it. If we select the tail again, and we come up to this pin depth, and right now it's on the top, so if we tell it to go down, I don't know, I'll click 2 or 3 times. Now when we wag the tail, it's behind the elephant, not in front like it was before. So the stacking order of the pins matter. So to me, this is pretty amazing that you can do this within Photoshop when Photoshop is just pixels. Illustrator makes a little bit more sense with all the anchor points, but this to me is pretty crazy. So if you ever need to slightly manipulate something, consider making it its own layer on a background and make it a smart object and puppet warp it. That's it for this file. We can close it. Whoops, I had to say yes to all of this. I was waiting for that. And again, this is non-destructive because we're working with a smart filter on a smart object. So close that file and we will move on to the next topic.